What I do. Okay. And three, two.
You are listening to Know the Score, presented by the CSPN. Visit our website at knowthescore.cspn.us. Follow us on Twitter at KTSPod and keep the conversation going using the hashtag KTSPod. You can listen to us on a variety of platforms, on iTunes via the podcast app, the Stitcher Smart Radio app, TuneIn Radio, on SoundCloud, or directly through our website, cspn.us. Cast your votes in our weekly polls at knowthescore.cspn.us or via our hashtags at KTSPod or the hashtag KTSPolls. And most importantly, keep our podcast and this network free for you by visiting our sponsors by going to cspn.us and click on the Keep Our Podcast free link at the top of our page. I am Tyler Ball. I'm here with my partner in crime and one of our moderators, Don Delarente. You can follow me at TA Ball #1, Don Delarente. You can follow him at Don Delarente. We're going to kick off the show real quick. We're going to talk about the NFL to start off. And Don, we've seen a lot of injuries. A lot of players have gone down, even including Thursday night's game with New England and Houston. But several players were added to the injured reserve list. There's some very, very big names, including Vikings having Adrian Peterson and their left tackle, Ryan Khalil. Lions running back in the future considered to be Amir Abdullah. He's also out for the season. We're just going to talk about how these teams have been decimated and who can recover from all these injuries.
I guess right off the bat, we'll just have to say the Minnesota Vikings have probably been hit the hardest. I mean, probably the three most important people on any team's offense, their quarterback, their running back, their left tackle, are all going to miss significant time with injuries. So, I mean, that's a huge blow for them. The Lions, with Abdullah, they have really high hopes for him. So that definitely hurts the potency of the offense in which they're trying to work with. The guy Houston from Chicago who blew his knee out, the defensive player again, that was a big injury for them. They're not, expected to do much, but their defense was supposed to be the strength of their team coming into the season. So that's another blow for him. And then, like you said, even, Jacoby Brissett, his first start, goes out, wins a game, but finds out yesterday that he has torn thumb ligaments. And Garoppolo, the week before, got landed on his shoulder, so his AC joint is jacked up. So they may have to go with Edelman or call somebody off the street to come play next week. So, yeah, it's a crazy time to only be 3 weeks going into week 3 and having so many significant people with injury.
Look at Josh McCown of the Cleveland Browns. Geez. You can look at Tyler Eifert, tight end for the Bengals and their explosive offense, who's actually a key part. Jay Cutler has a thumb ligament issue. He will miss the game against Dallas. Also, the big free agent acquisition, Danny Trevathan for the Bears. The Bears have about a third of their team on the injury list. A lot of them are just your nagging injuries, but your key ones. Of course, Carolina Panthers starting running back Jonathan Stewart has been ruled out with a hamstring. So I'm sure if you guys are interested for fantasy reasons, you might want to go pick up Fozzie Whitaker or Cameron Artis-Payne, because those are guys that are going to get the ball. We've only seen parts of Houston's offense because Braxton Miller has a hamstring and he's still out. So just a lot of issues. And the Falcons have two starters that are on injury that were added to injury reserve, including their nose tackle Chris Mays. And the Falcons defense wasn't all that good to begin with, and now they're down. Man, it's just all over the place now.
Doug Martin as well. Doug
Oh yeah,
Martin is hurt for Tampa Bay, so there's another person they're going to miss for about 3 or 4 weeks.
yeah, he's going to be out, and I actually have him and Charles Sims on my fantasy team, so I may have to move Sims to the starting lineup because he's going to get a bunch of touches. Now, before the season began, there was a lot of discussion of removing and dropping preseason games to avoid the injuries that were happening during the preseason. Now, could this kind of put the conversation in the same direction? Do the players need to play maybe more? Or is this just one of those things where it's football, it's a violent game, and there's just going to be injuries? It just seems like there's more often than before. Or it's happening to big-time players that sit out the preseason.
Yeah, I think that might be more of the mode. I mean, everybody has a different approach to the preseason. Some teams believe in playing their players, other teams believe in leaving their best players on the sideline and just getting their work in training camp. I don't think there's a real, bad way or wrong way to do it. I just think that football is a violent game, and sometimes you're just unlucky. And some of the worst injuries that look bad, like Brandon Marshall on Thursday Night Football a couple of weeks ago, turned out to be no injuries. And then something that looks kind of minor, like Adrian Peterson, is a very significant injury. So I just think it's just bad luck for some guys. I don't know if the conditioning is in question. Maybe the way guys are working out. I heard that more people are being interested in their upper bodies and putting a lot of weight on up top, and they may not focus as much on their legs. So that may be a reason why we're having so many lower leg and lower body injuries. It's just that guys are so heavy up top that their legs aren't able to support the added weight. That's just a theory. But injuries are injuries. You play football. I mean, that's just a part of what goes with it. You just hope it, can stay away from major contributors. You hate to see, the guys who sell tickets like quarterbacks and Adrian Peterson and, star wide receivers like that go down. But just a part of the game, and it always gives a chance for somebody that you didn't know or somebody that you thought should be playing more to step up and get into a role that they can maybe parlay into a starting job on their own team or a free agent contract in a couple of years. So
yeah, we talked about the talk was Garofalo really made himself a lot of money with his performance, and there's several others. You've got a guy like particularly the two guys down in Carolina, which is a run heavy offense. You got two guys that really played well in the preseason, and they could make a lot of money for themselves given this opportunity, because ultimately the team would love to not have Cam Newton at risk by running the football. Even though the team feels like he may be their best runner, but it's nice to be able to hand the ball off to somebody who's reliable. And it's not just injuries. You got to look at suspensions too. Look at the significant contributions that DeAngelo Williams has given Detroit. Given Pittsburgh with the absence of Le'Veon Bell, and they're also have Martavius Bryant, who's gone for the year. Look at Cleveland and Josh Gordon, and unfortunately, Cleveland is already down to their third quarterback. And their best player, Josh Gordon, hasn't returned yet. So there's just going to, you've had Cleveland's had Terrell Pryor kind of fill in the gap, and he's actually been a pleasant surprise in this between the preseason and this regular season. So maybe he's the guy that's the next man up for this year.
yeah, they might have to dust off his quarterback skills.
Yeah, yeah. See, here we go. Uh, I'm just looking to see who is going to be the unsung hero of a team that's gonna make a run to the playoffs because a man is down for some reason. Uh, as we go on to NFL Week 3, uh, you got several teams that are 0-2. Of course, the infamous stat that teams that start 0-2 have a 12% chance to make the playoffs. We've got Buffalo, Washington, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Chicago, Miami, and New Orleans. The best 0-2 team of that bunch, who would that be?
I think it's going to be two because they play in the same division, and I'm looking at this from a strong division. Indianapolis and Jacksonville. I just think that they played two kind of the first game for Indianapolis they should have won at home with Detroit, but they got into a shootout, and Detroit is definitely capable of winning those. And then last week, I mean, basically up until the fourth quarter, they were going punch for punch with Denver. And Andrew Luck did the thing that Andrew Luck has a tendency to do, which is throw a pick six, and it kind of went downhill from there. So I would say it's just those two teams, Indy and Jacksonville, just because their divisions are so weak. They're basically going to be playing each other to figure out, I think, who's going to get the playoff spot out of that division. Tennessee is not really a threat, and um, I forget the other team in that division, but. So yeah, I think Indianapolis and Jacksonville are probably the best 0-2 teams.
The I'm looking at. I always look at the team that has the best chance to the best offense out of these teams. Now, although Drew Brees is playing okay, he had a pretty terrible effort against the Giants, but we'll get into that shortly. But I think that when you can put an offense out on the field that can put some points up on the board, I think you have a just a better chance of winning. Even though your defense may give up a lot of points, you're still in the game because you can score. So New Orleans to me and Jacksonville would probably be the two best teams, and I would take Jacksonville over those just because I think that they're more of a threat offensively, and when they get Chris Ivory back in a couple of weeks, they'll be able to run the football too. So Jacksonville probably has the most potential. Indianapolis is probably, to me, the overall best out of the bunch, but I look at Jacksonville. I actually think Jacksonville is better than what they've shown, even though they're 0-2.
Yeah, they probably should have won the game at Green Bay. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they had a lot of opportunities. Again, bad coaching can, make players look worse than they are. I mean, 4th and 1, and you call a wide receiver screen behind the line to throw that. You got to basically gain 4 yards to get the one. I don't know how smart that is.
Yeah, and that's just a side note. I have a pet peeve on third down, or particularly third down when it's a passing situation. Why do teams rely on players' athletic ability to try to get the first down by catching passes short of the marker and relying him to make a move or make somebody miss to get there? Why not let the receiver get open at the first down marker and hit him with the pass? Or at least get him to where or throw the ball to where the pattern sets him in motion towards the first down. I just can't stand when teams do that. They hit the guy short, 3 or 4 yards short, and then he's got to make 1 or 2 moves just to get close to the marker. It's like the pattern isn't set up for him to get there.
Yeah, I was just saying it's a very curious the way that they seem to do that. Most coaching staff seem to, say, okay, we'll throw it 4 yards and get six, but yeah, it's really hard when they're playing you for the 6 yards and they're coming up and hitting you.
Oh, look at the teams that play man across the board in long yardage situations. If you're playing man, that makes it even tougher to do.
Right.
If you're playing zone, then fine. Yeah, they're gonna give it to you and make you play and then make the tackle. But just those shorter, particularly the 5 or less, and you catch it 3 yards and the guy makes a tackle. I just get beside myself and watching teams do that and having to now play the field position game or kick a field goal when all you had to do was just maybe a couple of seconds or more and the drive gets extended. That's all. I just wonder sometimes.
Well, we can talk about a bunch of bad coaching. I mean, the Buffalo game cost their offensive coordinator his job because of some curious play calling. I think what got him fired was you run Tyrod Taylor off to run EJ Manuel in underneath center on 4th and 1, and you got it the first time. Okay, cool. Then you come into a crucial part of the game and you're going to do it again. But instead of maybe this time faking it and passing it, they tried to do the exact same play again and it got stopped. And I think right then, that's when Rex Ryan was like, okay, I'm done watching this guy. If I'm going to lose, let me at least lose with somebody that's got a clue about what they're doing. Same thing
Yeah.
with the Redskins and their
Mm-hmm.
coaching. Their first game, their defensive coordinator went to sleep. I mean, I know that they want to, you spent 6 months coming up with this game plan about how you're going to defend Antonio Bryant, but after a quarter and a half, it's very apparent that plan isn't going to work. So why don't you throw that out and come up with something else? And then last week, you're playing the Cowboys. The Cowboys don't have anybody on defensive line. Your running back is actually looking pretty decent, and you get into the red zone 5 times and you never run the ball. You throw fades and then on first down, and then you're forced to try to throw 2 more downs. And you end up leaving touchdowns on the field and you get beat by a rookie quarterback. So I know this was a season that we're supposed to be, figuring out if Kirk Cousins is our, franchise quarterback and if he's worth the money. But what this actually may end up doing is casting a big light on Jay Gruden too, since the offense is his baby. There's no excuses. There are no holes on the offensive line like there have been in the past. There's no shortage at receiver. So those two guys actually may be linked together, and RGM may see that okay, there's no excuses on offense. We should at least be able to score points and be competitive just on our offense. Everybody knew the defense was going to be bad to awful. Bad was the good side of it. So I don't think those guys are going to have the light on them as much from our front office as our offense because there's no excuse for our offense not to put up 28 points at the least.
The irony of talking about red zone inefficiency as a in that game as a Dallas fan, I mean, and that's really the difference in the game. Dallas was about 3 or 4 more plays more efficient in the red zone, particularly with the threat of a mobile Prescott. And to me, I've asked for the last 4 years, even when the Cowboys were making their run 2 years ago with the healthy Romo and a world beating DeMarco Murray, Dallas still had problems punching the ball in the red zone. Run the football. That's I can't count the number of times I actually tweeted that very statement. Run the football. Because that is what good teams do. You don't throw the ball in the red zone when you're inside the 10-yard line. That's what you the field is just too small.
Right.
So until teams get confident in their running game and figure this out, I don't see them really progressing and becoming a threat as far as going into the playoffs. Speaking of teams that are, pretenders and contenders, We'll talk about the 2-0 teams. Uh, you've got Baltimore, the Giants, Minnesota, Philadelphia. We will include Houston in this conversation before Thursday night's game. They were a 2-0 team. Denver, Pittsburgh, and of course the Patriots. Who would you think out of these teams, who happens to be the best team out of this bunch, or the most legit 2-0 team?
I'm gonna have to say Denver because they've won 2 games with a rookie quarterback against a team. Usually, when when you're running down a comparison, usually most of 90% of the time, whoever has a better quarterback usually gonna win the football game, regardless of the other team's defense or blah 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 blah. So for Denver to have this rookie quarterback and he come out and beat Cam on the first game and then come back and beat Andrew Luck this next game, and he actually was a big reason why they beat Indianapolis. He was, making a lot of throws and touchdown passes, finding his receivers. I want to say Denver because their defense ain't going nowhere. It may be a little bit meaner and nastier than it was last year, just because they understand that they have to hold teams to 2 touchdowns a game with the rookie quarterback.
Okay, my vote is going to go to Pittsburgh. I totally like the way they're playing right now, and they have, out of this bunch, they have the most potential to get better because they get probably the number one running back in the league in Le'Veon Bell. Ben Roethlisberger is actually making good decisions. Pittsburgh actually is having a clue on defense, which was not really fathomable, but they're playing well and they seem to get it. DeAngelo Williams is playing out of his mind, and I think that Pittsburgh can somehow maintain. Plus, with the ease of scheduling, out of this bunch, I think that Pittsburgh has probably the best advantage over, just a notch over Denver, because of what they can do offensively. Who is the fraudulent team out of this 2-0? Which team is fool's gold? My vote goes to Baltimore. Baltimore, provided kudos to them for coming back against the Browns, but Baltimore to me just has not really played all that well on either side of the ball. I think that Joe Flacco is still trying to find some continuity with his receivers. Dennis Pitta is finally back, and that's good news. But I just think Baltimore is still not where it needs to be, particularly on defense. Of course you can, the Giants are running neck and neck with them because, best run defense in the league, but by far the worst pass defense in the league. So anytime you have that, and this is of course a passing football league. So I just think I think the Giants overall have a little bit more talent than Baltimore. So Baltimore is my pretender. What about you?
Well, I guess based on what we saw Thursday, I'd go with Houston here because they had basically their measure up game with the Patriots with the third string quarterback, and they didn't get any points, and they didn't stop them at all either. So I'd say Houston would be my fraudulent team here. I'm waiting to see kind of Philadelphia this week. They get Pittsburgh, so we'll see what their defense really is made of. But so far through the first 2 weeks, that's really been, to me, more impressive than Carson Wentz has been Philadelphia's defense, just how much more improved it is than it was last year. They're getting after the quarterback. They're not giving up too many rushing yards, and they're getting the ball back to their rookie quarterback, and that can only help. The more times he gets the ball, the more comfortable he can get in the game. And So I'm really looking forward to see kind of how they approach this week against Pittsburgh. I really like the way that, speaking of good coaching, the way that Philadelphia and New England use their quarterbacks this weekend. I noticed that Philadelphia was throwing the ball kind of short to kind of move the chains to get some string some first downs together. And then once they got across midfield to about the 35 or just outside the red zone, they give Wentz a chance to single up one on one and take a shot to try to get a nice immediate to long pass into the end zone. He threw one to Jordan Matthews that, I mean, was right in his hand. He couldn't have dropped it in his hand any better, and he ended up dropping it. But that would have been a touchdown, a 35-yard touchdown. And then the same way with New England against Houston the other night, they used a lot of two tight ends to make Houston have to single up on the outside, and then they let Brissett throw. Basically whichever side the safety's not going to, you throw the ball that way, and made it real simple for him. And Houston was lucky that he missed a couple of those throws early, because he probably missed two touchdowns in the first quarter on deeper passes that he just threw the ball out of bounds or overthrew receivers who were open. So just really, really outstanding coaching from Philadelphia and New England, with rookie quarterbacks, very limited in their experience, but they put them in positions to make them look good. So that's all you can ask for as a fan of the team.
Doug Peterson, interestingly enough, Philly approached the game just like Kansas City would, and no, I don't think it's an accident, because Doug Peterson is an Andy Reid disciple, and they looked like an Andy Reid team. So Philadelphia will be a team to watch out for, as long as they don't turn over the ball, which is probably the most impressive thing Wentz has done. And me having watched him at FCS Power, North Dakota State, I will we'll get to that shortly. But Wentz tends to play within himself, and I think when he saw the opportunity to make the play, he tried to make it, which is all you can ask for. But he didn't try to do too much. And typical. And that was how Doug Peterson played. So no surprise they have chemistry there. And I think the late version of the schedule is what keeps Philly from being the top of, being at the top of the two, towards the top of the 2-0 list, because it really gets tougher for them down the road. Just to remind our listeners, you are listening to Know the Score, and this episode is sponsored by Amazon. Keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon.com. Visit CSPN.us. Then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. You can purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, or apparel. And for every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends to CSPN a payment that helps keep Know the Score free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. If you shop at Amazon often, bookmark the link or add it as your homepage so that you can help the CSPN each time you order. We thank you for your support. Moving forward, we got some general sports topics. Of course, we've been out for nearly 2 weeks. We've had a lot of stuff going on. I first want to start with, actually, we were talking about Carson Wentz. We're going to talk about North Dakota State making another major statement in their program. Last week, they knocked off number 13 Iowa, which was their 6th straight win over an FBS opponent. Of course, North Dakota State is the 5-time defending FCS, or Division I AA champion. Over those 6 wins, the school has earned $2.2 million from the teams. And overall, FCS teams beating FBS teams are still rare, but it's already happened 8 times this season, including North Carolina A&T knocking off Kent State of the MAC. Don, just talk about the whole FBS and FCS thing, and give our listeners why this can happen at times.
Well, you can't get everybody, no matter, what state school you are. And so there's some little team in FCS that can get the guys that you can't just because of the numbers game. And when they play, they don't fear those guys because, hey, I was just as good to go to this school as this guy. I just didn't make it because of the numbers game. I think that's what happens a lot um, to a lot of these teams, and it just sheerly overlooking them as well. When you see linemen who are smaller, or defensive backs who are a little bit shorter, or receivers who are a little bit slower than you normally go up against every week. When you see that on film, I'm pretty sure the guys just have a natural tendency to relax and thinking that, hey, just our natural athleticism and just our athletic ability will be enough. But when you come against a team that has a really good scheme and some really experienced players and really good coaching, and you're the supposed better team, and you're kind of going, half speed or three-quarter speed, you're gonna get beat. And it's happening a lot more and a lot more. And I think that you'll see a lot more of these teams starting to respect the FCS schools a lot more, especially after this year, because I mean, these losses mean a lot more now than they used to with this playoff.
Yeah, and as the FBS schools move to no longer play these FCS teams, I think in the next 10 years, I think we will have a complete whitewash of FBS, FCS games. I think that these FCS programs will still continue to get better because just on the sheer amount of athletes that simply want to play college football, and they know that they're going to use that for means to get a quality education, particularly on the HBCU level. Usually you get about 10 to 12 wins a year, but we have had a couple of ranked teams fall. I mean, we almost had another one in week 1 with Tennessee and Appalachian State. And of course, Appalachian State pulled off one of the biggest upsets in history when they beat it then number 5 Michigan in the Big House. That game still resonates to this day. That was the game that boosted Appalachian State to a 1A power. Well, not 1A power, but that gave them boost to become an FBS school. They're still taking their lumps, but eventually they will be fine. I'm just looking forward to the day where you can put a top ranked FCS school against a number 1 FBS and give them a game. I'd love to see that one day.
Now, do you think from a financial standpoint that they would ever totally erase these games? Because I mean, a lot of these FCF schools, they need these games to, build up their budget, to travel and do the things they need to do for their conference scheduling. So do you really think that they will just eliminate them all?
A problem here's the issue. The penalties for playing the FCS schools for particularly a Power 5 league are going to be to the point where you can't really afford to play them. When you're looking at, like you mentioned, the losses will be the risk, not even the loss, but the risk of not playing another power school, or at least a lower tiered FBS school, is going to cost you when it comes to the college football playoff, even in expansion. I just think that, again, it's a numbers game. You can only play 12 games on the schedule, and generally 6 to 7 of them are going to be your conference games, which leaves 4 or 5. 3 of those 4, you're going to have to play against some area rival or someone close, or a lower tiered power conference to earn any points. I think that one game that you have against the FCS is going to be changed. I think it's going to be against a lower tiered FBS school, because you can pay them too.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, on the other end, what's the FCS school going to do? Instead of getting Ohio State, you might be playing Navy, or you might be playing you may be playing someone like Sacramento State or somewhere like that. My thoughts are, if it's not a complete whitewash, it may be elimination from the Power 5 schools, which is going to lower your payday.
Yeah.
Which in turn means there's going to be a more opportunity for FCS schools to get wins over FBS opponents, but it's not going to mean as much. So it'll be again just a money grab. You look at, and of course there's also basketball to consider as well. And there's going to be, I think you counter that by raising the guarantees in basketball. So instead of playing $40,000 to pay a smaller D1, you might be playing 60 or 70 because of not being able to play in football. It happens.
Yeah, they got to make up that money somewhere because, like I said, a lot of these FCS schools, those two games that they play against the bigger conference teams, basically, that's how they secure their budget to go forward for the rest of the season for their hotels and their travel and whatever equipment needs they may encounter during the season. So it's very important to those FCS schools to go down and play these big time schools.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if, and here's the thing, I don't know if the alumni of those FCS schools are ever going to generate enough revenue to where these programs don't need to play FBS schools. I just don't think I don't think the numbers will ever add up to
And
contribute.
it doesn't really benefit the FBS schools like you're saying, because for one, their stadium's probably going to be half to three-fourths full when they play at FCS school. So you're losing money on parking and, jersey sales and things in stadium. So that's one thing. And then if you actually can get that game switched out with a better opponent, you're going to get more people traveling and more eyes on your game and things like that. So, an FBS opponent really doesn't gain anything except for maybe, live speed practice if they, go out and handle their business. But it can go terribly wrong, and a whole lot of things can go wrong if you happen to lose. And I think that Iowa is probably headed down towards a long season with this loss because, now everybody has a blueprint on how to beat them, and a team that quote unquote did it with lesser talent as well. So I think they're in for a rude awakening after this film gets out and people see it.
Yep. And we go to staying in college football. The Heisman race is pretty much a two-name race right now. You have Louisville quarterback Lamar Jackson, who has just pretty much leapfrogged every name on the list except for maybe Stanford's Christian McCaffrey. But Lamar has the eye-popping numbers, and particularly what he did against Florida State. 5 touchdowns, responsible for well over 400 plus yards of offense for the third time this season. He's good. I just think that there's a couple more games on the schedule looming large down the road, as for any Heisman candidate. He's got to look at a nice one against another potential Heisman candidate and probably the best quarterback in the country in Deshaun Watson again in Clemson. That's the matchup I'm looking forward to this year as far as the ACC. What do you think about Jackson and as far as where he is as far as the Heisman?
Well, he's got two more showcase games coming up, or potential showcase games coming up. He's got the game against Clemson that you mentioned, and they also play Houston. And if Houston can continue
Mm.
doing what they're doing, that might be the game for the final playoff spot right there. As far as just Lamar Jackson, the football player, this guy is just amazing. I know a lot of people were saying, oh, it was, UNC Charlotte. Oh, it was Syracuse. Those numbers aren't impressive. But let's see what happens when he goes up against a real team, and that'll be game 3 against Florida State. And he rendered their defense defensiveless. I mean, basically, they couldn't do anything with him. He missed a couple of passes early, kind of trying to get into his rhythm, a couple of slants. He was just, off on. But once they got that first rushing touchdown by him, it was a wrap, and he just put on a highlight show. I mean, that one 48-yard run is just amazing. And like my cousin, me and my cousin were talking about it. He's like, man, this dude just glides. He doesn't really look like he's ever actually touching the ground. It just looks like he's just walking on top of the field when he's running. And he looks very effortless. He's so smooth when he's in the open field, and he's very impressive. He's what I call must see TV. And that's very rare when it comes to a college football player. But yeah, anytime Lamar Jackson is in a game, I'm definitely going to be trying to watch it or find the highlights just because I'm very impressed by what he's done so far.
Moving to Charlotte, North Carolina. There's been it's a hotbed of sports news right now. First, House Bill 2 is still resonating. The NCAA and the Atlantic Coast Conference have decided to remove all championships from North Carolina. This is, of course, a massive blow. I'm actually in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is ironically the home of the ACC. The home office is literally just off the highway in the Grandover area. And to make this move really hit home, as we figured, because North Carolina's a basketball crazy state, and to lose the championship, to lose the site of the championships, Greensboro and the ACC tournament are just they're synonymous, really, and particularly the NCAA tournament as well. A lot of name. We've had a national championship held here, won by NC State and David Thompson. Basketball is really the lifeblood. It's one of the definitive pieces of the state, and to have it taken away is really has really caused some ire amongst the residents of this country. Not even basketball fans. They know that the NCAA and the ACC tournament are vital to North Carolina, and it's just a very, very unfortunate situation.
Yeah, it was basically one of those things where they're going to get lucky with the ACC tournament because for the next 2 years it's going to be in Brooklyn. So in theory, it wasn't going to matter anyway for the ACC tournament. But I thought the bigger deal was definitely for the ACC football tournament, that game, which is a big piece of Charlotte's revenue stream, because you're going to get two, fan bases that are going to have equal amount of tickets, and it's going to be a big weekend. It's a long weekend. It's usually, over the Thanksgiving holiday, so it's a long weekend. A lot of people in town, a lot of tourist money, hotel money, that now just gets, gone up in smoke, similar to, the All-Star game. That was definitely going to be a big influx of revenue for the city and the state, and just the exposure, that long weekend, and all eyes being on North Carolina itself. So they've done a really poor job of trying to resolve this issue to where it would not cost people their entertainment. And I think that's, at some point we figured that economics would maybe be the driving force behind getting something done over this bill. But Pat McCrory has shown that, yeah, he doesn't care about setting money on fire. He's, dug in now, and so he's got to ride it out until the wheels fall off, no matter how much money he's cost the state and just people in general. I can say that HB2 personally has probably cost me about $1,200 over this last few months, summer months, for different cancellations of concerts and events
Mm.
that were to be held in Raleigh over these summer months. So yeah, it's a very unfortunate thing, and there's so much more hidden behind it than just the bathrooms, which is actually starting to come out now with the police shooting of Mr. Keith Scott this week. So now people are starting to see really what the bill entails, and not just, oh, they're just talking about bathrooms.
No, absolutely not. It's it's the EEOC has had a lot to say about this bill, um, as far as discrimination goes, and I think that there just needs to be a bigger effort the bill and saying that it's more than just quote unquote bathrooms. Uh, as we mentioned, as we talked about the police shooting of Keith Lamar Scott, the Carolina Panthers are going to play uh, on Sunday. Again, they're playing Sunday at home. There was some discussion with the NFL about moving the game, but there's been a major fight to keep this game at home, as to provide a place of uh, normalcy, to say. Uh, the demonstrations over the past couple of days have been peaceful since the unrest on Wednesday. Um, there's been a curfew set for Uptown Charlotte at 6 p.m. and the results of the last 24 to 48 hours have been okay. Um, it's just interesting to see when sports get involved and decisions that have to be made with security and all the things that have to be talked about. But it'd be interesting to see what goes on Sunday.
I think that everything will be fine. There'll probably be some form of demonstration at the on the outside of the stadium. My biggest thing that I'm only interested to see is what's going to be the mood of the players from the Panthers. Are we going to see, more players kneeling? Are we going to see, more players, with their fist in the air, considering that this is right here in their backyard now? When it's across the country or several hundred miles away, you can kind of isolate yourself away from it. But these players on the Panthers this week have had this right in their living room. So I'm going to be very interested to see if any of the players, you know, take a knee or what they're going to do during the anthem this week. And I'm glad to say that, it's kind of off our subject, but Colin Kaepernick got the cover of Time magazine this week, and I'm glad to see that people are finally getting past the action of him kneeling, and now we're starting to talk more towards why he's doing it and who he's doing it for. And unfortunately, this week we've had to add two more names to a list of people for why he's kneeling and why he's taking a stand. And I'm just glad that more teams and more across different avenues are starting to get with it and say, hey, yeah, this isn't cool. This is a problem, and we're gonna keep doing this until you guys talk about the real thing, because we finally gotten off. Oh, it's disrespectful for the flag. Oh, it's disrespectful for the military. We finally killed all that noise. Now it's time to talk about the reason why he's got to keep doing it.
Particularly, I love it when players actually take a stand and actually say it on national platforms. Marshawn Lynch has added his point of view, which is pretty much what you said, on the Conan O'Brien show, where he said, if we understand what Colin is talking about, then he's clearly not a threat to this country. Uh, and I totally with that. I think that the flag is being used as erasure. I also believe that when you bring up the quote unquote black on black crime / all lives matter, you're being used as a point of erasure to talk about the real discussion. Yes, those issues do stand, and you don't have to say those things. People are fighting to help the quote unquote black on black crime, quote unquote Chicago situations. That help is already there. But how are you supposed to entrust law enforcement to stop crime? This those are the questions that we need answers for, and this is why Colin chose to kneel and take his stand. So and until people start to see his point, then it's always going to be a standstill. And of course, you're always going to have some naysayers, because that's just the nature of the of the way people think. But I am proud that the message is getting out there, and hopefully, Time Magazine, having it reach there, will emphasize the message and not the method. On a brighter note, we're close to the end of the road for baseball. We're approaching game 152 of 162. Actually, some teams have already played game 152. You've got about 12 teams going down to the wire for 4 wild cards, so it's nuts. Just are you kind of looking forward to the end of the season, or any teams that you're looking forward to make a playoff push in baseball?
Oh, this is my favorite time to watch baseball. I have I watch baseball in three phases. I watch like the opening week, and then I'll kind of let it die down. Memorial Day is a big day, so that's like the first day I even check baseball standings. Then Fourth of July is just a milestone day because you're getting close to the All-Star game, and then this time right here, the end of September. And right now, if you're any team in the whole MLB, the one team you don't want to get in is the San Francisco Giants. It looked like they were dead um, the end of last month, and for most of this month, they had the worst record in the second half. But they've actually resuscitated themselves, and now they're basically in the second wild card spot, a half game, well, actually a game and a half now over the Cardinals. And this is an even number year, and even number years means when the Giants make the playoffs, they win the World Series, and they're basically in playoff mode starting basically since last weekend. They've been in this kind of we got to win every day to make sure we get in the playoffs type mode. So I watch out for San Francisco. On the American League side, my Orioles are fading. Um, they had a rough week this week. They lost ground to Toronto and Boston. They lost ground to Boston as far as winning the AL East. They lost ground to Toronto as far as their wild card spot. So I'm hoping that they can hold on and get into the playoff. The Yankees have basically come out the outside and we're making a strong charge. They had a little setback against Boston last week. They got swept, but they seem to kind of got their footing right this week, and they're back on a winning streak. So um, Kansas City and Detroit are also trying to make some noise here at the very end of the season, but I think they're just too far back to actually get into it. My only thing I don't like is adding the extra wild card is cool. It does give you some more drama. It gives more teams a chance to be in it. I just don't like the format of once you do play this game, it's only a one game playoff. Baseball's not really set up like that, so it would be cool if they could maybe play like a best of three and at least make it a series of games and not just okay, we're gonna play one game and now the team who wins is officially in the playoffs. And even though you got this wild card, you lost, so now you got to go home. I don't really like that.
I've never liked the one game playoff format, because for 162 you get one chance. I think it's too much emphasis on one game for you. You know, you've already played 162, and some people will argue that very thing, that you know, you played 162. What's number 163? I think that both wild card divisional playoffs should be. I agree with you. I think they should be a best of three, because you know, some teams have great pitchers, and you know, you want to at least get your second guy may be just as good as your first guy, or your number one guy may not be in that rotation depending on where it falls. So I think that when you have an opportunity, I think that if you get full advantage of that opportunity, then yeah, you increase that. You know, you've already added the second playoff game. Why not make it a 3-game series? I just think it makes sense. As far as the teams I'm watching, I always like to see which team that is about 3 or 4 games behind and make a push and take it on the last day. The team with the most potential to do that, right as of right now, as we look on Saturday, we look at Saturday standings. You gotta watch out for the Mariners. Uh, you know, the Mariners have proven that they can score some runs, and they actually, you know, they hit the ball pretty well, and they can actually field. So I like their chances of making a nice little run with these, you know, these last you know, in these last 8 or 9 games to go. I watch out for that. You're gonna have to knock them out, particularly with the Orioles fading like they are with their, you know, with the Orioles have a all or nothing approach when it comes to their offense. So if they run into a slump, you know, the Mariners can actually sneak in and actually take their spot. So, so we'll see. Also, Detroit has to watch out for them too. And on the National League side, it's pretty much the Mets to lose. You know, obviously you got to watch out for St. Louis, and even for Pittsburgh. I think the Marlins just don't have enough offense to make a run, even though they're only 5 games back. You know, and they actually struggle in the field too. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, October, the end of October is October just in general, but after like the 17th, 18th of October, it's my favorite time as a sports fan because all the sports are going at one time. It's the only time in the year where all the sports are going at the same time. We got football, basketball is going to be starting, baseball is in the playoffs, hockey is going to be in their first couple of like games, NASCAR is in their you know, their championship part of their season, and college basketball is just going to be starting, and college football is going to be in the middle of their conference schedule. So yeah, October is my favorite month to be a sports fan.
Oh, no question. Yeah, man, we're literally a week away from Midnight Madness for some schools. So, wow, it's all bunched up together after 2 months of about nothing but, you know, baseball, where we had to struggle to find topics. And actually, we're a few weeks away from Halloween, and of course, Halloween brings in the NBA, and the NBA decided to release their points of emphasis, and the 2 points of emphasis are very interesting. One will be punches in the groin area, and we say thank you to Draymond Green. Also, traveling. Gee whiz, really? But I think we have Shaqting the Fool to thank for traveling being a point of emphasis, because it seemed like every other week they highlighted, or every other show, they highlighted the uncalled travels in the league, where guys were moving their pivot foot multiple times, or guys getting uncontested layups and not putting the ball on the ground.
Yeah, that's one of those things like always that's gonna probably be a big deal in the beginning of the season, and then after the All-Star game, it'll probably go back to the way it's always been.
Yeah, because you don't want to decide. You don't want calls like that deciding games, obviously, unless they are an absolute must. But I think
Yeah.
that once the point of emphasis is being made, generally the players actually, get that out of their mind, and they don't tend to do the act as much. But particularly physical contact in the groin area is something that obviously should be mandatory, outlaw from the game. It shouldn't happen. There's no need for it to. We already have bodies crashing into each other, even though this is basketball, and we don't need to have those things happen. Guys who want to, groin injuries are very serious. Actually, you got about 15 players missing games in the NFL because of groin injuries. So we don't need that. Not
Well,
at all.
it shows you how much of a villain Draymond has become versus what the people think about Chris Paul. Because I mean, they could have enacted this
Whoo boy.
rule several years ago based on Chris Paul's actions, but because he's such a likable guy in the media and so forth and so on, it was just, oh, he's frustrated and blah 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 blah. But then now since Draymond is public enemy number one in basketball, we got to come up with point of emphasis on contact to the ground.
Yeah, what a difference a good PR team makes, huh? and Chris Paul, I know for a fact Chris Paul leads the world in great PR. Great PR. I mean, I live in Greensboro, so his PR has been in motion since he was in high school. So, it's just one of those things, man. It also helps that he's a blank time all-star, literally perennial, and still one of the best players in the league. So it's hard to believe he's an elder statesman now. But speaking of elder statesmen, we've had the retirement of the next to last link to an era. Kevin Garnett announced his retirement yesterday. Of course, he will maintain a consultant, eventually ownership role with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I just think that Kevin Garnett, even though he didn't look like much in the beginning, he figured the game out and literally revolutionized the power forward position twice in his career. He's another one like Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan. These are guys I watched going in to the NBA as a high schooler going into college. So I saw these guys play. And Garnett to me was just a freak of nature to me. He could do a lot of stuff at 6'10" that guards struggle to do. And he just seemed to get it. They called him the kid for probably his first 10 years because he still looked like a kid. But he was very much a grown man, very much dominated. To today's game, he would be a smaller, slimmer version of Karl Anthony Towns, basically. What will Kevin Garnett leave with you?
My lasting thing about Kevin Garnett is I'm not a center. The bold statement that he made coming into the NBA, because he knew that if he was going to be labeled as a center, that he'd have to probably play Shaq. And the 18-year-old Kevin Garnett definitely did not want those problems. And I think that from Kevin Garnett on up, that's the reason why you see not too many true players define themselves as centers. Everybody wants to be a power forward. And he, like you said, he had for 1995, 96, 97, he had a skill set that was so uncanny for somebody his size. His ability to cross over and take guys off the dribble, his ability to extend his jump shot, whether it was on the baseline or at the free throw line. Um, like you said, he just embodied a skill set that we hadn't seen from somebody his size. And it basically ushered in, like you said, the Karl Anthony Towns, the Anthony Davises, and just, any of these bigger guys that you see with pretty good handles and able to step out away from the basket and get the ball into the basket by dribbling or, shooting the ball, like Chris Bosh definitely is a KG disciple. That's probably the player that I see the most when I look at his game. Kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how Kevin Garnett plays, where he can do the things back to the basket and bang, but his biggest strengths are probably getting you away from the basket and using his skills there. So just glad that he did get a chance to experience some playoff success after spending all those years in Minnesota. Didn't work out with Marbury there. Everybody thought that was going to be, the new Magic and Kareem basically when they got together. But it didn't work out for those two. He put in a lot of time for Minnesota. They could just never quite get over the hump. And then they did him a solid and sent him to Boston. And then, for the second half of his career, they became a powerhouse again. And he was basically the major cog for that. And his game evolved from being, the main threat as an offensive guy in Minnesota to kind of being the defensive stalwart in Boston and taking a bigger leadership role. And so, yeah, KG definitely makes me feel old because I can remember being 14, looking at the guys that got drafted going, he's straight out of high school. He's really skinny. I don't know if he's going to make it, considering looking at that draft class with all the other guys. But it just makes me say that there's only like Dirk and basically Vince Carter left from, the guys who came in the league when I was in high school. And, the whole era of that mid 90s, draft class from, like I said, 95, 96, 97. They're just about out of the league now.
We've really seen a complete change in basketball as far as the era goes. With Shaq and Iverson going into the Hall of Fame now, and you got KG, who's definitely a first ballot entry in the Hall. Eventually, Dirk, and Tim Duncan, of course, is also a first ballot guy. Just seeing these, and Kobe Bryant as well, obviously. Just seeing these guys from day one. These are day one guys that we can honestly say we saw and we're anticipating them making an impact in the NBA, and now they're stepping away. I mean, time has flown. Just watching players evolve and and change in the whole attitude of just because I'm a 6'8" kid, that doesn't mean that I have to be in the post all the time. I can step out and hit the three, or I can drive by you and dunk on you, even though I'm 6'9" or 6'10", or a Kevin Durant type. We saw the evolution there from KG to guys like Melo and LeBron. Just big guys who excelled on the perimeter. And and eventually, when KG became an outstanding defensive player on top of that, I didn't see that coming, to be honest. I didn't see him. I saw him, just being a guy that maybe could get you a double in Boston and letting the other guys score. But Kevin not only became the leader, but he became the guy that they flowed the defense around. He was there to block and change shots. It was really remarkable, to be honest. But we will miss him. We will miss his intensity, which is obviously a major part of his game. KG was one of the biggest trash talkers of all time, and that matters. KG came to get you off of your game, then outplay you. So that was his personality played a major role in his success, and we will always remember that. Just a reminder that you are listening to Know the Score, presented by the CSPN Network. Visit our website at knowthescore.cspn.us. Follow us on Twitter at KTSPod, and keep the conversation going using the hashtag KTSPod. It's time for the KTS polls, brought to you by Skull Candy Audio. And at Skull Candy, this crew makes the best headphones, earbuds, and gaming headsets, all with lifetime warranties. Skull Candy produces many types of audio accessories, including headphones, sports earbuds, Xbox gaming headsets, PlayStation gaming headsets, and DJ headphones, along with iPhone headphones and MP3 headphones. And now, for the listeners of Know the Score, Skull Candy offers free standard shipping on your orders. To help keep our podcast free, order from Skull Candy by going to cspn.us, then clicking on the Keep Our Podcast Free link. Click on the Skull Candy banner, then shop for high-quality audio accessories with free standard shipping. Skull Candy Audio through CSPN. Do it today. All right, we're going to not have nominees for our three superlatives. The play of the week, which is a single on the field play that we think is outstanding. We also have Ride the Pine, which is a person, place, or team that has done the most to hurt their standing in the sports world and simply needs to have a seat. And of course, our score of the week, which is a single number or statistic that is outstanding. Of course, that could be current or historic. First, we will go with our play of the week. And Don, what's your top play?
I'm going to go with Chase Utley's no-look flip recovery to get the out. Chase Utley, second baseman for the Dodgers. Ball gets hits to him. He kind of muffs it. He's chasing it, and he just grabs the ball and basically does a no-look pass behind the back straight to the first baseman, and they get the out. So that's a very cool looking play by Chase Utley.
Yeah, Utley just, literally behind his back. It was just improbable because he bobbled it, and I just didn't think he had a chance, to be honest, to make the play. Clearly, it was a outstanding play, and actually a key out too. My play of the week is going to go to I'm gonna strike one for the old guys. Andre Johnson, who has actually, you could say, much maligned Andre Johnson for, being the old guy. And this shows you how football really is. Andre Johnson is, of course, an outstanding receiver, brought in from Miami. He had a very successful career with the Tennessee Titans, but eventually the Texas went with the youth movement, and now he is in Tennessee with the Titans. He made an amazing catch over 3 defenders to win the game against Detroit last week. So I'm going to make that great throw and catch by Johnson, and the throw, of course, from Marcus Mariota as my play of the week. And next, we will now go to Ride the Pine. And who are you going to have ride the pine this week?
I think it's going to have to be Tony La Russa, questioning Colin Kaepernick's motives and sincerity by saying that when he was in the Bay, he only saw him promote himself. Tony La Russa is just so out of touch with what's going on in the climate of the society right now. And so he definitely can ride the pine for me.
We've got so many candidates. I think I'm going to go with, we got some I can mention the candidates. We can always go with, you got Steve Clevenger, who's suspended from the Mariners for his inflammatory tweets relative to the Charlotte police shooting of Keith Scott. You could talk about Rex Ryan, who's just made another terrible prediction. But, I actually am going to go with Clemson coach Dabo Swinney for his comments discussing players and their stance with the national anthem. Swinney, who is a devout Christian, he used this platform to promote Christianity, and I don't have an issue with that. But when you go and talk about, instead of focusing on the issues at hand, you go back in the past. You go back to say, you guys are lucky to have all these things. He name drops two-term Black president. The right. You have the right to vote. So just he mentioned certain advances that have happened for Black people. That yes, we're happy about those, but that has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on today. It doesn't matter that you experience these freedoms when you're dead. And that's pretty much a bottom line. So Dabo rise the pine because he clearly missed the point in what he was trying to say. And of course, name dropping Martin Luther King is doing King a disservice, because he actually wanted these same freedoms, and he didn't want to die either at the hands of police. So Dabo definitely rise the pine. We'll now go to our score of the week. And Don, we can have you get your particular number.
All right, my particular number is 0-26. That's Kirk Cousins' record against winning teams as a starter in the NFL.
Yeah, good old Kirk, huh?
Yeah, and as a guy who is very invested in the wins and losses, that's 26 times I've been very disappointed. So that's basically gonna be the determining factor on Kirk's season this year, is how many good teams can he beat, because the Redskins schedule is full of them after having they got a first place division winning schedule this year. So we're going up against all the division winners from all the other divisions this year. So we'll see if he can get 3 or 4 of those this season and help the Redskins get into the playoffs and help himself make hundreds of millions of dollars.
My number of the week would be 0. Actually, I can't use 0 because you have it, but I just want to highlight the fact that Team USA went winless in the World Cup of Hockey after John Tortorella's statements about not playing a player that would, sit down or take a knee against the playing of the national anthem. But my number of the week is actually 10.0, which is the league leading yards per attempt average for a surprising Matt Ryan, quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, who actually leads the league in passer rating with 1.1.4. Atlanta leads the league in explosive plays, which are deemed plays 20 yards or more. Their offense is dynamic. I actually like watching them play, but I'm interested to see if the defense can actually hold up. And the problem is they have injuries now. So Ryan's going to have to throw the ball even more, which Falcons fans are cringing, because normally that leads to interceptions and poor decisions.
Hey
So
Tyler, you know what's funny? That's the same offense RG3 got ran out of Washington D.C. He said they could, he said that the coaches were terrible. Kyle Shanahan was awful.
hmm. Oh boy, folks starting to look funny in the light, boy. Gee whiz. And even though I thought RG3 didn't necessarily get a fair shake, but man, maybe he knows what he's he knows Kyle maybe knowing what he's doing, but yeah, Matt Ryan's put numbers up. I just hope it translates to more wins. But of course, he's going to have to outscore his opponent. So I expect both of those numbers to go down just a bit as the season progresses. All right, we've reached the end of our show for this week. Normally, we will cast our final thoughts. Don, if you've got a final take for this week as we go on to watch, week 3 of the NFL season and so on. What are your final thoughts, man?
Final thought is just going to be about the game that's going to take place in New York tomorrow between my football team, the Washington football team, and the Giants. This is basically the season for a lot of people in the Redskins organization. I think that Joe Barry could find himself out of work if Giants go up there and Odell Beckham abuses us and he doesn't show any type of knowledge of how to stop that. I think it could be the downfall of Kurt in this game if he comes out and plays poorly, and Jay Gruden as well. I mean, there's so much. The expectations are so big on this season and so big on Kirk Cousins that 0-3 is just disaster, especially with the remaining schedule that they have. So yeah, starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow, it could basically be by 4 o'clock. It could be, well, we got a season, or I could be looking towards maybe new coach, new quarterback start next season. So big game for the Washington football team tomorrow.
My final thought, as of course, we at the CSPN always salute people who support this network. I want to give a shout out to Twitter by Corn. Corn has actually engineered a successful bourbon ball event. Actually, this is the event number 3. He's returned to the Manor in Washington, D.C. on November 11th. The event is officially completely sold out. Congratulations. Corn is just coming off a successful event, Tequila Saturday down in Atlanta, which I attended. I actually saw a few members of the CSPN down there, and it's always good to have these sort of celebrations and get-togethers because it allows us to escape from our reality as a culture. We need that togetherness and we need that celebration so we can step out and have an impact on the world and teach other people to be better people. That celebration feeds us strength. So I'm thankful when folks can put events together, and I'm definitely give a shout out to Corn for the sellout of the Bourbon Ball in DC on November 11th. I hope you got your tickets. I will be in attendance, and I hope this will be just as good as it was last time. Well, for Don Dillarite and myself and our producers, Classic and Mel, I am Tyler Ball, and now you know the score. And that's a wrap. Appreciate it, Don.
Tyler,
Yo,
you're the Greensboro Aggies, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I wish you good luck in every week except for this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation there. As you saw, I got a ton of running backs, so I'm just hoping that they all don't get hurt. But I decided to play this a little bit differently. So it's gonna be a fun matchup, man.
Yeah, Cincinnati, they crushed me last week because by no means necessary were they going to let Antonio Brown go off. And so by having that handcuff, Ben played great, but Antonio Brown didn't get up.
No, they actually rotated. They rotated triple coverage at sometimes. I actually watched that game. That was the game we got on CBS here, and they literally rotated a linebacker and the safety on top. So Ben had to go the opposite, and that kind of slowed him down too.
Yeah, it did. And the two interceptions he got was by trying to force it into him. There's only like one play I can think of where Antonio Brown was like 101 and he was coming across on a broken play and he ended up dropping the ball. That's like the
Right?
only real threat where they got somebody 1-on-1 on him the rest of the game. They were like,
Yeah, they were stuck. You look at let's look at our lineups, man. I got Sims and I'm gonna start Fozzie Whitaker against Minnesota.
Yeah,
I've
that's gonna
got
be tough
Russ.
sledding though, because their rushing defense, their run defense is pretty stout.
I just hope they throw to. I actually am anticipating them throwing the ball to Fozzie,
Yeah, there you go.
and get him out the backfield, get him in some isolation. I'm actually gonna go with Sim. I'm not trusting Miami's defense, so I'm putting both Crowell and Duke Johnson on the bench. Um, I actually am going to start. Uh, I picked up Quincy Enunwa off the wire, and I don't know if I'm going to put him in over Melvin Gordon, but I think I may move. I may go ahead and move Gordon and start Enunwa
Yeah, because
and
Brandon
just
Marshall
wait.
might not play this week, right?
Yeah, he's going to be out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good decision right there because he's a problem.
Yeah, he really is. He's just he's playing extremely well. Um, I just picked up Ebron because I gotta have somebody from the crib on the team. Um, and of course I'm actually gonna start Jordan Reed, so
Yeah,
I have a reason to watch the Redskins game. So
I need this Derrick Henry or this Jonathan Hill thing to pop off. But I thought that Derrick Henry would get a few more red zone touches than he's gotten so far this season, but they seem to be riding with Murray a little bit more than I thought they would.
that's it. That's interesting too. I'm not sure why I'm not sure what they see in Murray. I thought they were going with Henry too. I mean, it's interesting. Are you
Yeah, I
going to
don't.
are you going to put in are you going to put in Sproul?
No, I don't have Sproles. My backup, my bench is mostly receivers and tight ends, and
Okay,
Derek Carr.